What is up everyone, Sean here and welcome to another video featuring a top whatever video. Today we're going to be talking about top 5 disappointing / worst games for this list here. So it means we're going to have a mix between games that aren't necessarily bad, but there are expectations that haven't been met in ways I do want to talk about in this list, and also just games that were just straight up bad here. So you're going to see some of that, or both of that, in this list here today. So this is quite the video, and I actually wanted to sit down and talk about this. So as a little follow-up with my top 10 best personal games that I played for 2017. So let's go right into it with number 5, and that would be Splatoon 2. Splatoon as a series I do dearly like because it's another franchise that shows that Nintendo always tries to go for something fresh for any genre, and Nintendo tried to tackle their own kind of shooter for the genre, and I think it pulled out very well as a whole. For the first Splatoon was pretty fun for what it was. It did have its faults as a general shooter, especially with the lobby experience, the online and stuff like that. Netcode was pretty solid for the most part by the end of things, but the co-op aspects of it were lacking there, from what I can remember. The Splatfests were pretty fun for what they were. You were able to vote for your favorite thing that were between the two, and it was a fun little way to kind of keep it fun and fresh at the same time. But just have, I guess an excuse to keep coming back to the game here. Now in this case, Splatoon 2 overall is no exception here. It did update some things about the previous cons about the previous game, but however it did introduce to some new cons for the series here that they should work on in the future here. One huge example is that the co-op experience is still weak. However, they did kind of touched upon it with Salmon Run, which is a fun little mode that you can play, but sometimes the weapon rotation can be a little questionable. There were weapons that made it hard to make it enjoyable at times, even with friends here. At one point we had weapons that were all slow at rate of fire, so it was pretty difficult to try to pull off consistent wins against all the little salmons or whatever. And so there are times where Salmon Run can be difficult to enjoy. But otherwise, it is a neat little take on the zombie horde shooter aspect when it comes to shooters. It is kind of like their answer to the Nazi zombie series that the Call of Duty series had past few years. And a Salmon Run here, I think it can be fun whenever things line up, and and not to mention the time window can be really annoying as well, so you can't really exactly play it anytime you want. There were times where you did want to just feel like playing and shoot some hordes, but there are times where it's closed and you just you can't really do anything until it actually opens up. And I feel like they should really fix that next time they come around to to bring this mode back for Splatoon 3 or whatever. Eliminate the windows and just give us all the weapons that we can get, and allow us to pick and choose, and just let us go wild with the salmons and stuff like that, and let us have fun with the horde shooting and all that stuff. Now the general lobby, of course, I got to talk about, because now, yes, they did allow us to play as a team in some aspect with the league battles and stuff like that. You had to go through so many hoops to be able to do that, and it is counterintuitive overall as a process. First off, you have to level up to 10 in a general level, and then you have to go into rank battles and rank up to B, which can be very difficult because it is, well, objective based, where you need team play in order to make it efficient, in order to make yourself effective with the team you're with. And communication is very important, obviously, but you're most likely alone, so you can't really play with friends until you I guess, reach that certain rank, which is, again, it's counterintuitive, and it was so annoying to get to. But I myself was able to get there, but not without, a lot of the and stuff like that along the way. But finally, when I got there, it was all right for the most part. I think the payoff was a little weak because of how league battles work. I just wish that they just allow you to just make a clan like you would win Call of Duty, or make a party lobby or whatever, and just go about in turf wars and just stick with your team the entire time here. In turf wars, in just regular sessions, you're not allowed to really play with your friends. You can join each other's lobbies, but you're not guaranteed to play on the same team. It's always just kind of just randomized, and you're always praying that you're playing with your friends, and a lot of times you are playing against each other, unfortunately. Now, yes, you are playing with each other technically, but you're not playing as a team all the time, and that's where it gets really annoying here. The only time, again, you get to play with your friends is during Splatfest. Unlike the previous title, this time around, they absolutely allow you to play as a team during Splatfest, which is, yeah, of course, a much needed thing here, because in case you and your teammates pick the same thing or same category, and you want to stick with that, and you go as a team and try to take as many W's as much as you can in order for your category to win by the end result of the poll or Splatfest. I just wish that this feature can just carry over to just the general turf war mode. If it's there, so why not have that everywhere else? And it's not like it's difficult for the developers to do, and yet they don't really consider ever doing that for the future, I don't think. So that's really unfortunate, that while yes, they did update some parts of Splatoon, it does introduce to some new cons that become questionable and really hold the game back from being that perfect Nintendo shooter that I personally have envisioned. And this whole theme about the squids and kids and all that stuff, it's a really neat theme to go with as as Nintendo's prime shooter franchise. And for the most part, it's very creative. I love the art direction, and I do love the visuals, and the music is no exception, of course. And Splatoon 2 just delivers all that, except for the important bits of the gameplay. Like I said, with the lobby experience, the online, the matchmaking, and all that stuff. It definitely still needs work, and they really need to consider that for Splatoon 3, or just like the future updates or whatever. If they really can turn around and be able to do that, and also just get rid of all those hoops in order to just play with your friends online, especially with turf wars, come on, that it should happen. But it looks like we're not going to see that anytime soon. Maybe, hopefully, in Splatoon 3. I really hope so, because this is a really fun game, but these important bits that they've missed are really holding it back from me, holding me back from actually really getting into this on a consistent basis, and be able to play with friends here. And but meanwhile, the single player was fun. The story mode was acceptable. The gameplay aspect of it was really fun. I love the level design. I love the visuals and stuff like that. The presentation, all the works. Now, I am a little disappointed that we haven't seen a Mari amiibo with her in the kimono, which is such a cool design for her. I love that look on her. And yeah, we haven't seen anything on that, so a little disappointed on that personally. But the story aspect of the single player mode is a little weaker, and of course the last boss fight isn't as impressive as the first Splatoon game. But for what it is, I think it's still an exceptional single player mode for the game, and it's still fun for what it is. I love the gameplay aspect of it, so it's, I think, worth playing here just for the level design and stuff like that. I think it's still a fun little campaign mode here for a shooting game. But with all that said, overall, it is still a pretty good game. I do play it from time to time, but not as consistent as I really wanted to because of its big important faults that they've missed here. And they did cover some of the faults from the previous games. They still need to work on the important bits that really make it a well-rounded online shooter, and hopefully they get around by the time Splatoon 3 is out, and just hope for the best for Splatoon as a series here. Otherwise, I don't know what I'm going to do or how I'm going to react if they don't really pull through and really land that solid punch to solidify that the Splatoon is the series to go to as a shooting genre. Number 4 on the list here, up next, is ARMS. Now, this is more on the disappointing side. I didn't really go into this with much expectations. I didn't really know what to think here. ARMS is another Nintendo game that is kind of fresh, fresh take on the 3D fighting aspect. Not necessarily, like the traditional fighting games you would see with Smash. I think that's their answer to the traditional quote-unquote fighting game here. But despite that, it is still one of the most popular fighting games of all time when it comes to the competing side anyway. ARMS overall failed to kind of pick that up here. It's just a really casual fighting game or arena fighter or whatever you want to call it, featuring yourself flailing your arms, kind of if you want to use your motion controls or whatever. And I think it's neat at the time, but the novelty kind of just wore off really quickly here because of the important bits are kind of missing here for a fighting game. For example, flashy supers. There's none of that here. I think that's important for making an appealing fighting game of any sort when it comes to any game here. And if you don't have very exciting attacks to show for the audience here, you kind of fail to grab their attention on that part. But each fighter do have their own unique little abilities, which is neat. But you need to really grab them from the surface and be able to grab them so they can dive deeper into these parts of the aspect when it comes to fighting games. They're not gonna really get into it until they see something flashy. Other than some hooks and punches and straight back jabs and whatever. I mean, it's neat that they can stretch their arms, and the lore of this game basically is that they wear masks and they become the fighters that you see in the arena here. So they do have their own human forms or whatever, but we haven't seen that. And the lore could have been a little neat if we actually see this whole thing flesh out, but we didn't really see much. You don't really see much in the endings, and there were some appealing characters, but I believe the gameplay aspect of it wasn't able to carry it as far. So that's why overall the game hasn't really impressed anyone too much. There were some people that really tried to promote it and try to get it to Evo at that far as a competing fighting game, I guess, but it just falls flat because of the faults that you see in this game here, including the flashy visuals, or the supers or hyper combos, critical arts, whatever you want to call them. Just different parts of mechanics, besides just punching or whatever. I mean, yes, of course, there are some loadouts and stuff like that, some parts with the gloves and stuff like that that do change things up here, but overall, if you're gonna look at it from the general audience side, it kind of just looks the same here. None of the characters have their own special moves. I mean, and none of them have they don't really have anything different from the surface here. So that's why, again, it fails to pull in people in order to see the deeper side of it. That's where it becomes a little more special here. If you're a hardcore fan of it, obviously you guys understand the deeper meta of the fighting game. But unfortunately, it has those things missing, so that's why people can't really look into those parts. that are actually good. It's unfortunate because, you know, again, some of these characters are really appealing. I love the character designs on these guys, but the gameplay kind of falls flat, and that's why it is considered for me as a disappointing title for this list here. Let's just say that I literally played this for a week and I just traded in back to Amazon. That's literally the end result for ARMS here for me. Number 3 on the list here, and speaking of which, for fighting games, Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. Now, why is it on this list here? I did, you know, talk good about it at some points in my review video, but a lot of the important stuff for fighting games falls really flat here. And that's how I feel about this game. It's just flat. The art direction, even the music, a lot of the visual stuff, and the presentation is just so flat, bland, and it just feels unfinished. And on top of that, the voice acting feels weak here. The characters look bloated for a lot of them. The faces look pretty bad, especially before the update. Even still then, they still need they still need some work here. Really a shame here, because it's really, you know, again, that's like a very important part to drawing the audience here. And I feel ARMS kind of felt that way, but at least it's visually appealing to look at when it comes to the character design and stuff like that. And the colors and all that stuff, they do land those pretty well. And some of the soundtracks is catchy. But here in Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, it really falls flat on that. Especially with the arcade mode and the very disappointing story mode that a lot of people make a joke out of. And of course, the roster. The roster is the weakest aspect. And it is the most important part for fighting games like this. When you have team-based gameplay here, and if the roster is weak, you're not going to really grab anyone's attention here, and it's really unfortunate because the actual gameplay part of this game is really fun here, but even someone like for me, it's not enough to really get me going. There are some characters that I do like Venom, Sigma, Jetta, and even, you know, Doctor Strange for this time around, but, you know, because of the presentation and the way things flow to try to, you know, get you going, it just really doesn't. And unfortunately for me, I just don't really feel like, you know, playing Marvel vs. Capcom all the time here, which is a real shame. Again, the gameplay aspect is so much fun. I wish that, you know, all the important bits have a facelift treatment, but because of how it turned out, it received poor sales, and people kind of just make a joke out of it overall. And the Capcom seems to put it on the back burner comparing to Street Fighter V here when it comes to the competing side. You know, at Capcom Cup, you know, we've seen quite a bit of reveals for the, you know, Season 3 for Street Fighter V, but not really anything for updates on Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite here, which really shows that it's just, you know, it's that kind of game, and it's really unfortunate, you know, again, because the gameplay is so much fun, but, you know, it just didn't receive enough love to really appeal to the audience, and it just failed to grab anyone's attention. Hopefully, with the purchase of 20th Century Fox from Disney, by Disney, things may change. You know, the return of the X-Men, or you know, and the return or debut of certain Capcom characters. I love that. I love to see for the game here, but, you know, I think, you know, this title was designed to be, you know, that this kind of you know, this kind of game. It's kind of hard to explain. I feel like, you know, the designers and developers kind of molded a game around this roster. So, you know, so it seems like to me we're not going to really see the X-Men anytime soon, if not at all. Maybe hopefully in the next Marvel vs. Capcom title, but again, it's just really unfortunate, and overall, it is a disappointment because it is fun, but all the other important bits for a fighting game really fall flat, and it just fails to pull me back in again and again to you know, to play the game and to really get into it as much as I would like to, you know, back when it was first launched. But Infinite is, it's just a hollow shell of what it was from the previous title here. Unless it really gets an injection of love and respect and just charm from the developers, it's really not going to go anywhere. And I don't know how it's going to turn out for the next season or wave or whatever of DLC characters here. Especially right now, currently, with Marvel taking over the Capcom side. You see Winter Soldier just, just kind of just hopping over to the Capcom border. Just, hey, you guys look a little lonely over there. You know what I mean? Like, it's really a shame because I do love the Capcom side of these games, and it just doesn't really seem exciting at all, with the exception of Jeddah being in the game. He's really cool and all, but yeah, it's just, overall the roster, the presentation, the music, and everything just feels really weak. Meanwhile, the gameplay and the lobby system and the other important bits do feel like the game that I felt like, that's the kind of game that should be developed. And meanwhile, the other games, the fighting games that I do play more often don't have this kind of lobby system. So it's kind of a weird thing going on. Marvel's Capcom has the important bits that I do like, but it falls flat when it comes to the other bits that I do like as well. Meanwhile, the games like Tekken 7, Street Fighter 5 don't have that nice lobby system, but the rest, it kind of pulls off a little better, in my opinion. So hopefully we see something more from Infinite, and it's just, it's a series I hold dearly, but unfortunately right now it's still just a flat line here, and hopefully we get a jolt of electricity for the game to really just explode with excitement, but we'll have to see for its future. Woo, man, that was a long talk with Marvel, but now we're gonna go into number 2, which is another series that I hold dearly to my heart, but unfortunately it's also getting a pretty, how do I say this, a joking, well, it's getting a shitty treatment right now, and that's Sonic Forces here. Sonic Forces just, it not only falls flat, it just crashes to the floor and just it just infinitely falls to the abyss, and probably even smashing through hell. It's just how much of a fall it has taken. And man, I mean, first off, I was really excited, don't get me wrong, for Sonic Forces here. I made a video back when it was first announced here, and I was kind of hooked onto it because of the whole resistance thing and the forces and all that stuff. And in the back of my head though, the story was probably going to be very campy, very cheesy. It's probably not going to be that grade A kind of story that I was looking forward to, or I do look forward to for games like this. But even with that kind of mindset, it just even falls, it just crashes harder than that. And my expectations for the bad sides even exceeded. So, it's not only a disappointment, but it's a pretty bad game. It's one of those worst games that I played that I did for 2017 here. Sonic Forces is just, it's just, not only the story is bad, but unfortunately the gameplay is just horrific. The homing attack was it was very consistent. The controls didn't feel tight at all. You just slide off the levels like no tomorrow, and it just didn't feel like a crisp Sonic game. Especially with the release of Sonic Mania not too long before it. So it had that to be it had that ladder to be expected to able to climb up to, but again, it just falls flat, and not only does that, it crashes the floor, abyss, and even through hell and all that stuff. Sonic Forces was definitely one of those worst games of 2017, and on my list is no exception here at number 2 here. And it's just really unfortunate again, because I really do love Sonic for what for what it's trying to be. And there were some exceptional games in the past, like with Sonic Generations. And this game is supposed to be kind of like the sequel to it, but it's kind of a terrible it's a terrible paint job and redo, if that makes sense. And even then, it's just somehow they just screwed it up, and it just ran poorly. The boss battles were lame. The villains were lame. And the overall gameplay just not tight at all. It just falls so short as a functioning Sonic game here. And man, you know, with that $40 price tag here, even with that, I don't, you know, it's not exceptional here. You know, yeah, sure, cheaper, but it doesn't even function as a game here, in my opinion. And there are some aspects I do like. You know, I'm glad that they put the Japanese voices in, and the gallery experience was, you know, pretty pleasant. I was able to, you know, check out the voices and compare them side by side. So that, at least that experience was made easy. But really, otherwise, you know, even the character creation, which was another big part of Sonic Forces, you know, that was something I didn't really expect much from it, and it definitely met those expectations. So it's just doesn't really, you know, it doesn't really land a solid punch here for anything here. In fact, it just makes a big ass whiff, and that punch comes around and hit itself in the face. That's how I feel about Sonic Forces. It's kind of just, you know, again, it just falls flat on his face, and that's pretty much it for Sonic Forces. Especially with Mario Odyssey, not necessarily competing, but it's still, you know, like that whole thing with Mario and Sonic. We all know who won that battle for 2017 here, and unfortunately, the blue blur here just he's currently at a standstill. So yeah, Sonic Forces, oh boy, unfortunately, it's definitely one of the worst ones on my list here. But we still have one more game to cover as a worst game. But before I go into that, I'd love to do an honorable mention here that I feel like I should talk about. And that honorable mention goes to Gran Turismo Sport here. Now, why is it on this list here? Well, now, meanwhile, you know, Gran Turismo, in my opinion, is not really a bad game. Now, it's not the Gran Turismo that people, you know, everyone was looking forward to, but for the most part, it's an alright game. You know, I do like the GT Sport parts of it, the big race that, you know, that this game offers, but the other characteristics that distinguish Gran Turismo from the rest of the racing simulators doesn't really nail it as hard as, you know, as its previous titles here. First off, the car roster this time around is a lot tinier, much tinier from the previous title, especially if you compare it to Gran Turismo 5, which I believe had the biggest roster of all time here with over 1,000 cars. But however, the graphics, you know, were upgraded, especially, you know, with the PS4 Pro. It definitely does help. But the cars selection, unfortunately, I think they had to make a sacrifice here in order for the game to run. So they have to shrink the car roster by a significant amount. And the selection was a little questionable at first, because this is the first Gran Turismo where we didn't have, you know, very iconic cars such as the RX-7, the Supra, even the classic Skyline, and you know, anything you can think of here when it comes to the classic Japanese cars. It just really falls flat on those parts. Although yes, it does have some new ones that you know, people do appreciate nowadays. But what happened to the classics? What happened to the Japanese classic cars? You know, where did those go? But now, at least the updates do come free. And now we have the RX-7, and some of the classic cars do make a return as well, including the Skyline and some other cars. But otherwise, you know, we haven't seen the other important iconic cars, you know, like the Supra, for example, and all that. So, you know, unfortunately, it's not the greatest Gran Turismo Sport or Gran Turismo game. Especially with the campaign mode, you know, at launch just being a giant tutorial mode. what? But with the with the previous or the most recent update, now we have an actual campaign mode here with several cups to choose from, and now you have pretty much a Gran Turismo game on your hands. Now, overall, I think it's a pretty solid one with the updates now, and it's now worth purchasing in my opinion if you're really into Gran Turismo Sport. Now, yes, the fact that it is always online does turn off people as well, which is also another negative aspect of it that came with at launch here. So, for example, if the servers are down and you're trying to earn money in the game, that doesn't really actually save, unfortunately. So, if the servers are down and if you're actually doing some races, you're kind of screwed on that money that you earned for that day. So kind of unfortunate when it comes to that part. So that's why, you know, games that have to be online all the time, those, you know, it has those kind of flaws, and it's important for games to have offline aspects so that you can, you know, have people enjoy themselves, you know, when they just want to relax and kind of just try to earn something on their own. But you know, that always online policy doesn't work quite well, which is why, you know, previous consoles that try to do that, it wouldn't work anyway, even if it actually went through. You know, that's why games shouldn't always be online. They should always have options including online and both offline. Now, Gran Turismo Sport does offer enough offline for you to get into now. So it's not that bad of a game, but it's definitely not the best Gran Turismo. But it is beautiful to look at. So if you want a game that, you know, if you want that features, you know, vivid eye candy when it comes to cars, this is probably the game for you on the PS4 anyway. If you especially have the PS4 Pro, I think, you know, this is a game to pick up to really showcase the pro power for your PS4. Now we're going to go into number 1 here, and this is kind of a little bit of a controversial thing because, well, number 1 here is Star Wars Battlefront 2 for the PS4 and all that stuff. Now, I didn't actually play the game itself. Mostly, I did play the campaign mode. I managed to redbox it. They would let's play with friends, and boy oh boy, did that fall short. So yeah, even, you know, the campaign mode was disappointing. You know, I was kind of looking forward to it actually, but you know, it just doesn't really, it didn't really get me excited by any means. And I did play the beta for Star Wars Battlefront, so I did feel like I got enough of that. It didn't really offer too much new. I did like the class system, but meanwhile, there were parts that I didn't really like that really turned me off from actually making a full purchase for the game. Example, the loot box system. You know, I made my rant video about that, so I'm not going to go into it too much, but it's complete bullshit. And it ruined the whole progression system. And even with that, there are other aspects of the game that I do like to see fixed. Example, the scoring system for when it comes to like getting vehicles and stuff like that. That needs to go. Absolutely. You know, if DICE is gonna make a game like that, why don't you just throw in the same system they do with Battlefield and just throw in the vehicles on the field already, and just, you know, have the vehicles ready to go on the field, and just let, you know, and so that way people can just get into it, and the vehicles are always kind of out there and really provide that Star Wars experience. And but this time around, you know, even if you do have enough score to get these vehicles, they suck. They don't really feel empowering by any means, you know. And that's like one of the most important, or one of the most funnest aspects of Star Wars is the vehicles. You know, whenever you see the vehicle appear on this movie screen, you know, you always see it blow stuff up. You know, like blow the enemy away, and including like the gunship from the Clone Wars, including the Naboo fighter or Naboo starfighter, and of course the enemy set with the TIE fighters and all that stuff. Those vehicles feel weak on the battlefield. And so I feel like the points you spent for those vehicles are wasted, and you of course try to save up those points for the heroes. But unfortunately, the way it works is so bad that even by the time you get to the hero that you want, the game is over, because most likely it's just so hard to earn those points. And like with the whole loot box system and stuff like that, to get your hero that you want for this many credits or whatever, even if you get that hero, you aren't guaranteed to play that hero because of the whole scoring system in the first place. So it just, those two things really ruined the game for me, and I that's why I couldn't really get into fully purchasing the game here. I was really excited at first. It seemed like EA was listening to the fans from the previous Battlefront title, and I think even that felt like a much more pleasant experience. See, at least you spent $50 and you get what you want here with more maps and heroes and all that stuff. But they really wanted you to spend a lot more money with the loot box system. Oh hey, we took out the season pass system, yay! But hey, it's gotta make money somehow, so we just doing that nice loot box system. Yeah. So that was its attempt to get that money back and all that stuff, and really become that cash cow for them. But the internet fought back. Everyone agreed, and for once, and all the gamers downvoted that Reddit post that EA decided to put out, and it was pretty much the most downvoted Reddit post of all time, even as of right now here. So this was definitely one of the biggest controversies of all time for 2017, if not the most, when it comes to gaming here. And we'll see if EA actually learned from this experience. We'll see about that in its future. Hopefully they'll by the time Star Wars Battlefront 3 comes out, everything is kind of everything what we wanted for a Battlefront game. We can get into vehicles just like that. We don't have to worry about the scoring system, and we don't have to worry about loot boxes, and we have to worry about just anything. Just give us a very straightforward shooting game featuring that Star Wars experience. I literally just want a Battlefield game with that Star Wars skin, and we have a perfect Star Wars game here. Make sure you have the sounds, all the music and stuff like that to really make it come together as a Star Wars shooting game. And that's something I would love to see, and hopefully we'll see that someday come to light, and we can all enjoy it for once here. Come on, EA, we really want this to really come to a reality. But hey, if you haven't learned from that big controversy, that even where politics were involved, and even Disney came in and said, hey, you shouldn't do that, so because it's gonna make us look bad. Come on, I think it's time to really turn things around, and really take note of what fans really want for a Star Wars game here. So that's pretty much it for my 2017 worst / disappointing games for top 5 here. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I think I definitely had a lot to say here, but hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, hit the thumbs up, and if you have any of your own disappointing / worst games for 2017, leave it down below in the comments section, and I'd love to check them out. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button as always. It really helps out, and I highly appreciate it. So hopefully 2018 will provide some solid titles, but I don't know, some bad ones are bound to be a thing for 2018, but hopefully we won't see as much. We'll see about that. So hopefully y'all have a happy gaming for 2018, but it's just the beginning here, and I'm still excited to see what gaming has in store for the future here. So anyways, I'll see you guys in the next video. Sean out.